Hi, this is Dex Gelfand, and I've got something new to share with you along the lines of my practice of what I call therapeutic spiritual counseling. And the subject for this talk is psychiatric medications and drugs of that nature and what to do regarding these and another way of looking at this issue. Now, the paradigm that I grew out of as far as counseling goes was originally what's called standard Scientology. There are many great, potentially great techniques and elements and ideas that have been imported into that large volume of material that Scientology lays claim to, regardless of where it came from. And there's applications for much, if not all, of those techniques, although sometimes I feel they need to be changed in some ways to be more about empowering a person than, than having a person accept and swallow whole an entire paradigm without question, which is never a good idea about anything. Now, there's much to be learned, though. There is much of value to be gleaned out of that, and as there is from anything and everything. Now, uh, I think that to be great at anything, you always have to look beyond established information. You have to do more than study existing material if you want to be great. So let's be great in the subject of therapeutic spiritual counseling. And now let's look at the subject that I'm bringing up. Drugs and medications. Now, the reason I even mention the Scientology background in this context is there are rules in Scientology that you are not acceptable for counseling if you've recently, or let's say too recently, had even an aspirin, okay? And if you've had certain psychiatric medications, common things like antidepressants, and so forth, then you may never be qualified. You can be labeled what's called an illegal PC, an illegal pre-clear, which pre-clear being somebody who, comes to Scientology for counseling sessions, essentially. So you can be barred, you can be declared illegal if you've taken psychiatric medications. And a lot of us remember the famous rant Tom Cruise made, which he had to then step back from after he really sort of verbally assaulted an actress who found comfort and help and value in taking some psychiatric medications. Brooke Shields. A lot of us are familiar with that. I mean, that's the perspective of Scientology. That's the imposed party line of Scientology, that the psychiatrists are the enemies. Well, see, in my own personal perspective, here's the problem with that. Fact is, it is not it's not all that uncommon, unfortunately, that there are people who are so disturbed, so full of anxiety, too much emotional pain that they can't bear it, and that's why people kill themselves. Too much pain of one kind or another. So a lot of times, in that condition, a person could and should look for whatever solution might be open to them. And a lot of times, the first thought, the common idea in our society is medications. And we don't want to shy away from the fact that these medications, they're all going to have their downsides. They're all going to have, harmful effects, as well as whatever their good purpose might be. And with the most common psychiatric medication would be an antidepressant, what they call SSRIs, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. I've done some research about this. I'm no expert, but I understand that what it's about is increasing and maintaining level of serotonin in the brain, which helps a person to feel calm and not overstimulated, and not to feel too much anxiety. And I'm not saying that the best way to accomplish that is by taking drugs, but that is a symptom, low levels of serotonin. That is a symptom of a person who is experiencing too much anxiety, and it is a method for calming those fires. That's a fact. And so there are times when resorting to a medication is, my associate here will back me up on all of this, by the way. She likes to get attention. Thank you. So anyway, sometimes these antidepressants and other psychiatric medications are the only thing that help a person to bear with their lives at the moment in that passage or that time or that condition, so that they can function at all and so they can bear to live. So I find it very irresponsible to take a hard position against all use of psychiatric medications. It's a fact. And, of course, part of the downside is when you take a medication or a supplement or anything, the purpose of which is to raise the levels of some substance that your body should be producing enough of naturally. If you overdo that, or if you do that too long, one thing that will happen is that your body will get the signal that its own work is not needed, and your body will cease to produce at all, or produce very little of necessary substances. For instance, in sports, the athletes who have used steroids, performance-enhancing drugs, they've learned that if you're going to use something like testosterone, if you keep taking it day after day after day, your body won't produce any testosterone at all on its own. And that's a very dangerous condition. I'm sure the same thing applies to selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So yes, there are downsides, at the same time. Again, I'm not going to say nobody should ever take a psychiatric medication. That's irresponsible. If that's something, if that's your solution for the moment, and if that keeps you off a ledge, or jumping off a bridge, help you hold it together. Well, you know what? That's the tourniquet or the Band-Aid you need at the moment. But we also need a way to restore a person to where they don't develop too deep and too long a dependence on such things. And that's what anybody who would be taking those medications would want. Because as long as somebody's taking those medications, they know that they're in danger, that there's something lurking there in their minds, which is very threatening, and they have to keep holding it off. Nobody wants that condition, of course. So in my experience, I've actually had the experience of working with clients in the situation of taking psychiatric drugs, medications. And I just don't see turning people away who really need your help. I can't see that. One of the earliest experiences for me was having a client who was actually on his way here to see me for a session, for his first session. And his wife phoned me from the car. And she said, Dex, I don't know what to tell you, but he just took some Xanax. He had a panic attack in the car. So I don't know what to tell you, because knowing that I come from a Scientology background, as they did, there's all these rules that you don't accept somebody for a session who's taken such things, But the worst thing I could have said was, well, you tell him to turn around because I'm not going to do anything for him today. It'd be the worst thing. How can you say that to somebody who's already in that degree of anxiety? I'm not going to do that. So the correct thing to say, in my opinion, which is what I did, was, well, you tell him that's just fine. He's got nothing to worry about. Do what you have to do, and we'll have a session when you get here. The theory being from the Scientology perspective is that you're not going to be able to help somebody like that, or it's going to be more difficult. Well, I will agree. Yeah, it's going to be more difficult because these medications shut off a person's connecting with, the painful emotions and feelings, the incidents connected to these things, all these conditions. They make them harder to experience, harder to digest. Basically they're putting some sort of filter to filter out the pain and the anxiety and everything that's connected with it. So therefore, I mean, what we're doing in a session, as I'm defining processing, it's spiritually digesting your material. And these medications, are used to prevent connecting with too much of that. So we're up against, it's not a solid, firm, impenetrable barrier, but it is something that diminishes one's ability to connect with the material that they need to connect with in order to spiritually digest and process it, and overcome the anxieties, the emotional pain, whatever it is that the person needs to address. So yes, that's true. As a matter of fact, when it comes to certain drugs like marijuana, I've had clients who told me that we found out they smoked marijuana. Well, my position on that is, I'm not the police, I'm not the cops, I'm not your mother. It's not my job to tell people what to do and what not to do. That's how I feel. And I feel that it would be very hypocritical to go around telling people that they should never smoke marijuana. And we all know there are good medicinal purposes and uses for marijuana, number one. And number two, you know what? I like my drinks now and then. I like to have a mojito. I'm not a big drinker, but I enjoy a glass of wine, a mojito. So how hypocritical would it be to say, well, that's okay, but smoking marijuana isn't? I mean, just honestly, let's take this up for a second. Whoever said, I lost my family, my marriage, my job, my career because I smoked marijuana? Whoever said that? If it happens at all, it's extremely rare. But whoever said, I lost my marriage, my family, my job, my career, my home because of drinking? Oh, that happens all the time. So, it's not our place to be judgmental or be the cops. So when I've had clients who smoked marijuana, I feel the responsible thing to tell them is, well, look, you need to understand that, any of these kind of drugs that you take, they're going to, at least to some degree, diminish your ability to connect with your material. They are going to, at least to some degree, diminish your ability to perceive, experience, or create mental images, which is mechanically generally what we're doing with almost any technique we're using in a therapeutic spiritual counseling session. And sometimes I'll explain it this way. I charge X amount of dollars per hour for sessions. Now, you may be diminished. Let's use an arbitrary number. You may be diminished in your ability to process. Say you'll be at 80% capacity. You'll be diminished 20% in your capacity to function well through the mechanics of processing your material, spiritually digesting your material, connecting with it in a session. So you're 20% diminished if you're a chronic or habitual pot smoker. So just understand that I don't have a special 20% off rate for pot smokers. So it's a question of how important is it to you to do that versus getting the most for your dollars. And of course, the obvious thing, well, don't come to sessions stoned. I feel that's the right way to go about it. But now let's go back to talking about psychiatric medications in particular. Now, this client that I'm speaking of, we had a session and it went well. He did manage to process some material and digest some pain and feel better afterwards. We did successfully relieve him of some of the material that he needed relief from, and we continued to do this for some time. I left it up to him to when he could, dispense with his medication. And as time went by, he was taking it less and less, and then not taking it anymore, or taking it very rarely, if at all. He felt it was very successful. He could function much better. He didn't need to take this medication with any regularity if he was even still taking it at all. That's one case history. Another more recent client comes to me, and this client is using a couple of different forms of antidepressants, seeing a psychiatrist, seeing a social worker, and dealing with quite a bit of anxiety. This client had spoken with a few other prospective counselors or auditors to work with and settled on me. Perhaps, I don't know the other ones, what their positions were regarding the medications, but I would imagine that few, if any of them, were accepting that the person had to do any less but completely stop taking their medications first, which was something that the client was not prepared to do, couldn't make that jump so easily. So we've been working together. This has in fact been a current client of mine. And so over the past few months, this is an interesting thing, but we've successfully cut back on the medication. This client no longer takes the medications at all for 2 days before any scheduled session. And we're going twice a week. The rest of the time, both medications have been gradually reduced. So now at this point, this client is taking only half of medication A and only half of medication B. And we are successfully continuing to reduce the medications as this client finds himself becoming more and more able to experience life and whatever they're experiencing in their minds without feeling like it's too much pain, without having too much anxiety. I will read a statement from the most recent session, which is of this week. At the end of the session, I'm able to cope with feelings that come up and see how it goes, and I'm feeling connected with other people. That's quite a change. That's a wonderful thing. So there's great progress being made. And how do we go about this? Well, I let this client continue to see whoever, his social worker and his psychiatrist. I don't insist on anything, but we work together. We have this common goal of having this client arrive at the point where he can at least get through his day and be happy and comfortable enough that they don't feel any need to rely on any form of medication. It's going very well. And what's interesting, and this is a breakthrough, is that essentially we're all working together. I am working in tandem with this client's psychiatrist. I don't pretend to be the expert on the effects of taking certain dosages of certain psychiatric medications, or to be an expert on the best way to wean a person off of these things in terms of how much to reduce what medication, how soon, and how frequently. So we're all playing this by ear. We're all learning from this experiment. It's an experiment. As I said, if you want to be great, then you don't want to just rely on existing material. You want to push the envelope a little bit, go beyond, and explore and conquer new territory. And that's what we're doing here. We've got somebody coming from a Scientology auditor background, me, working in tandem, in fact, together with a psychiatrist. I tell the client, when do you see your psychiatrist next? Okay, well, why don't you ask the psychiatrist? Let's ask the psychiatrist, what can we cut back next and how much? Everybody manages to work together. That psychiatrist and I, we don't know each other's names. Not that we couldn't. We haven't spoken with each other. Not that I wouldn't. I would love to. I think that we're crossing a new barrier here. I think this is exciting. I mean, the idea that somebody comes from, derives from, I've really evolved from standard Scientology quite a bit. I would not call myself a standard Scientologist or even a Scientologist, really, but that is my background, and render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. That's a lot of my background. I'm very thankful for what I learned and that passage through which I've learned so much and grown from. Anyway, so I'll let the psychiatrist who knows far more than I do about the effects of certain dosages of medications, the studies that have been done, what happens when a person takes something, what happens when they've been taking it a while, what forms of withdrawal or other effects can occur when they stop taking these medications. And so we're stepping down gradually, and we're working as a team. Myself, the client, and their psychiatrist, and all working together towards this same goal of arriving at the place where this client is okay with his life, is doing all right, doesn't need to take these things anymore. I think we've got a real breakthrough happening here. The client has been progressing well in session. One of the things that they comment on, and I obviously notice, is an increasing ability to connect with, experience, and process their heavier, their more intense energies of anxiety and so forth. This person is becoming stronger and stronger and more able to take these things on, and is very cognizant of that and thankful for it. This is a breakthrough, this idea of working together synergistically to accomplish this. And God knows there are so many people taking these medications. I wouldn't even hazard a guess as to how many people have been interested in the Scientology-related paradigm for whom the door was barred because they were on medications and were afraid to not take them for good reasons. Sometimes you don't just suddenly stop taking these things. That would be irresponsible. So now we've got a breakthrough. We've got a new path and a new availability for people in this condition. And I would like to see this grow. I'd like to see a movement come out of this. We take away this stigma, this contention between other fields of therapy like psychiatry or Scientology-related paradigms, so that these do not need to be adversarial. They don't need to be adversarial. We should be working together. We should be understanding that we're all trying to do something good for people who need it. So why don't we do that? I have certain expertise, certain skills that can help a person who has arrived in a condition that they felt a need to take medications. That psychiatrist has certain knowledge and certain skills in how to administer these medications. And there's a good purpose to these things. And if we can have that situation of a person taking psychiatric medications less and less until they're not taking it anymore, but meanwhile they had what they felt they needed, that that calmed the fires so that they could sleep a little bit at night, and so they could function and keep their jobs and not be hysterical chronically and all the time, and just as a holding measure, while more therapeutic techniques or processes are underway to help that person get all the way back to being able to function and be reasonably happy and well without the need for medications. So we're into new territory here. It's working, and I think it's very exciting. And I would love to work with other people who have this situation or condition of being in such a condition that they're taking psychiatric medications. I would welcome contact with doctors and psychiatrists who dispense such things and would like to work together with me or learn more about how we can wean a person off of these things working together. God knows this is needed. I think that a lot of times with standard Scientologist, which again I'm not, but there's this idea, we only want to help the able people to be more able. We can't be bothered with trying to help a person who is in a certain condition or doing certain things. Well, I'm not part of that we. And whoever wanted to turn somebody away who needs their help? Well, you don't have to. And to my other practitioners, in some way doing something similar to or related to what I'm doing, I will be happy to share with you what I'm doing, what I've learned, what I'm learning, I would be very happy to mentor you. And well, let's all just get rid of these walls. Let's do that. Let's all work together, because we can be great and we can accomplish great things. Thank you all for listening. Have a great day and always have fun.